So guys, good morning everyone, and thank you for being here with us today. We'll be discussing some lessons and strategies from North America and Latin America. I feel that my back is towards that side, so I guess I'm better at positioning like this. And I have a very good panel with me. My name is Tiago, I'm the CEO at Solin Global. So I would like to start by introducing the panelists. So Bill, I'll start with you. We'll go from this side to that side.
Okay, thank you, Tiago. We did this last year, I think.
Yeah.
It's good to be here. I love your country, by the way. Good
Oh,
morning,
thank
everyone. Bill Pasquale III with Princeton Public Affairs Group. I'm a regulatory compliance lawyer and lobbyist across the globe, representing clients in America. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me back. So I represent Atlas Live. We are a B2B platform. We provide turnkey solutions, white label, and I'm going to be talking about the regulation specifically in Brazil because, as all of you might know, regulation kicked in starting from January 1st. So I'm going to be talking about Brazil specifically.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Valeria?
Hi everyone, my name is Valeria Turchinska, Chief Legal Officer of Better. We are a service provider to B2B operators and sports books. We create sports and esports content, live data and odds, and sell the back of the services to sport books and operators. We are going to speak about legal aspects in Latin America, especially Brazil, Peru, Argentina. So probably we will bring you some interesting information from the legal side.
Thank you, Valeria. Patricia.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Patricia Lalanda. I'm partner of Loira Abogados, a specialized law firm in gambling, both land-based and online, also in European Union and Latin America, among other countries. I lead the ITIP and New Technologies department of the firm, and we do provide 360 services as we are over 250 lawyers. Thank you. I want to thank Hipther and Sultan and all the organization for putting together this awesome conference. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Patricia. Ellen?
Hi, everyone. My name is Alon Segev. I am a lawyer called to practice in Canada, managing partner of Segev LLP. We are a law firm with offices across Canada and the United States. We are a full-service business solution with specialties in iGaming and land-based casino as well. And in my spare time, I follow Bill around the world, speaking at conferences. I try to keep up with you, Bill, but
You do a great job, and you're a great company.
You're not an easy guy to follow. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much, guys. So let's start by addressing the complexity of regulation. And I would like to ask you, and I'll ask everyone, and you can all answer. What do you see as the biggest challenge when entering new markets? And what lessons from your regions could help others as well? And Ellen, I'll start with that side now, Bill, if you don't mind, because yeah, thank you.
You were looking at me.
Ellen.
Well, I think it's not really a legal perspective. I think it's sort of business perspective and understanding local markets. Competing against large players has always been a challenge for our clients. I'm looking at the Ontario model, for example. You've got some real dominant players. Even though Ontario is a massive market, we had $63 billion in total dollars waged, $2.2 billion in gaming revenue, but still it's dominated by a handful of people. Understanding local market dynamics is a big challenge, and the marketing spend as well, right? Entering emerging markets has been easier in some jurisdictions where they allow gray market operators to enter without casting any aspersions on their prior history. So it depends on the market.
All right. What about Spain? What about Patricia?
Yes. Well, I am based in Spain,
Yeah.
but as I mentioned, we do offer services to many jurisdictions, and we do a lot of multi-jurisdictional work, which allows us to understand this specific question. What are the challenges and the opportunities for the operators? I think one of the key aspects Alan just pointed out was it would depend on who you're advising. The challenges for the big players aren't the same ones as for the small players, so you need to cater and you need to understand, I think, very well where that operator is coming from. Has it only operated in Spain and now wants to jump to Latin America? Then the strategy is one. But I think just to point out something new, one of the big challenges for the online gaming operators is to actually be able to structure their teams properly and to able to coordinate what they've been doing in one country, two countries, three countries, to go and move to another industry. There's a lot happening in Brazil, and obviously there's a lot of lessons that a lot of operators have been learning, specifically because Brazil is a completely different market with different motivations of many operators and a lot of history. So just to name, these are some of the challenges that there might be.
Thank you. Valeria, would you like to add your contribution? Yep.
I would say that from suppliers' standpoint, for us it's hard to understand whether we need to get the license or to get the certification. Sometimes the legislation is not clear, and local legal advisors do not understand the type of your product. They have to understand first what you do, what you deliver, and only after that, if you need certification or if you need the license. These are the first questions we usually face. And I would say that to have a strong local team and strong legal advisors is one of the key success. And another thing I would say that from the suppliers and also operators standpoint, the taxation. For example, LATAM countries, they have huge taxation. And this is a problem not only for local companies and local operators, but to offshore as well, because Latin America has few double-treated taxations with few countries, and that's why the withholding taxes are also high, and it brings a lot of costs. Okay, we should discuss it.
Yeah, I'm going to continue for Brazil, right? Brazil Federal. Last 6 months, we were trying to prepare for Brazil Federal, and I'm going to say from the product side, nothing could prepare us for what's going to happen in Brazil, right? Because all of the branded reports, the guy just mentioned before, our colleague, branded reports, those RGS reports, etc., etc. It's just, it was just, let's say, a chaos, right? And from the product side, the biggest challenge is that you don't know what's coming next. More or less, you do have the requirement from the regulator, but it changes maybe once a month. Some other regulations are added, taxation is changed, the KYC process is changed. That's first. And the second part is that from the perspective of platform, we do have different clients, and different clients have different needs, right? So, for example, if client A wants onboarding in their way, client B might want it in a different way. So you need to be adaptable, flexible, and I need to have, let's say, modular architecture of the products so that you can kind of connect different models and build a different type of system for each client. And all of them should be certified, and all of them should be regulated. So I would say this is the biggest challenge, not knowing what's coming next and being super flexible and agile.
Thank you. Bill?
Yeah, you're in a very good position. Your country's very exciting. It reminds me of 13 so years ago when we launched in New Jersey and then across several other states in the iGaming side. And then again in 2018, after the U.S. Supreme Court decision on May 14th of 2018 to repeal PASPA and bring sports betting, both retail and online. My frustration, part of my raspiness, and thanks, Zoltan, for connecting me last night with my old friend Mike Caselli. We just walked in the door about an hour ago. I'm frustrated because many operators, this is not directed to just one jurisdiction, but many operators across the globe that want to get into a certain jurisdiction forget to ask a key question that Alan and his brother Ron can answer very adeptly. Anybody can help you get a license, any lawyer off the street. That's not the question to ask. The question to ask is, can that attorney assist you with localization and personalization and relationships in that jurisdiction? Lawyering is not just the sort of the factual regulatory hoops and shoots. It's having strong relationships. And the first question I would ask, I'm not an operator, but I represent 87 across the globe, different operators. Anytime you're hiring an attorney, the key question is, what have you accomplished? And if the answer to that is, well, I got this client licensed, or I got that client, big deal. That's not the differentiator. The differentiator is, can you expedite? Can you help in advisory services with the localization and personalization? I mean, let's talk about this emerging market in Brazil, which everyone across the globe is fiercely interested in. You just hire any attorney to help you get that done. I guarantee you 6 months from now, you want to call a gentleman like this because you're going to be frustrated. Because there's lawyers that churn and burn, and then there are lawyers from across the globe that get things done and can help you scale and be efficient. And I have heard so many people, some of you are in this room now, that have been massively disappointed. I'll end with this. I've had 16 different operators in the past 10 years try to hire me. And they were pissed at me when I told them, you're never getting licensed. These are what I call yesterday, don't call them black market. Doesn't do it justification. They're illegal operators. They want to get licensed. And they didn't want to hear they're not getting licensed. So what did they do? They hired some rinky-dink law firm, maybe a white shoe law firm out of Chicago or New York or LA, who said, yeah, we can help you with this. And then $500,000 later, and a year and a half, and they got the answer that I gave them for free. If you are a bad actor in most qualified, regulated jurisdictions, you're not getting licensed. You can rehabilitate money. You really can't rehabilitate personalities in the suitability pursuit in the gaming world.
Thank you, Bill. So we're going to move on to gray markets. And Ellen, thank you for bringing this up during the panel preparation. It's a very interesting topic that we actually all agree we would need more time than what we actually anticipated. Many operators are both active in regulated and in gray markets as well. Can these companies really have their cake and eat it too? Or will the regulators come and take the cake away? And I'll start with you, Alan.
Yeah, so, we can literally spend the whole hour talking about this. So this is a question that that we often get. We've got operators that are licensed in multiple jurisdictions, including in Ontario. And it's just really enticing for them to target gray markets as well as regulated markets. So using Canada as an example, some operators are very interested in partaking in the Ontario marketplace while also dipping their toes in other provinces in Canada, which we'll call gray market right now. So it can be done. You could put structures in place and do some corporate reorganizations and some creative licensing, but ultimately it's short-sighted. Really timely in the news, I opened up my email this morning, and Earnings and More did a report how Bet365 just walked away from its Chinese operation. And the news piece went on to suggest that it could possibly be cleaning itself up for a potential exit. And of course, DraftKings is highlighted as probably the only suitor for Bet365's $10 billion business. So short-sighted in that regard. One, if you are a gray market operator, good luck raising funds on the public market. If you're a gray market operator, good luck raising in the private markets, even private equity deals. You know, venture capitalist firms, private equity firms are not going to be interested in investing in gray market operators because ultimately they're going to want an exit. And it's more difficult exiting when you've got a gray market business or even a regulated business with a gray market component, much like Bet365. So short-sighted in that sense. The other sense is, you know, markets are regulating one after the other. Using Canada as an example, the next market that we're really interested in seeing opening up is Alberta. We're now expecting that to happen Q1, Q2, 2026. Ontario was somewhat unique in the sense that it didn't discriminate between black hats and white hats. So if you were a gray market operator, they still let you participate in the marketplace because they wanted to dry up the gray market, but it did create some difficulty for those gray market operators. So we saw really long periods of investigations and investigation fees. If you are a gray market operator as a supplier, I'm just talking about operators, but even suppliers now are having difficulty. We saw what the UKGC did with respect to evolution, and that created problems for a lot of suppliers as well. So again, it's enticing to dip your toe in the gray market, especially considering that you're not dealing with taxation rates and licensing fees and compliance and so forth and so on. But ultimately, you know, we take the position that it is short-sighted. And it's also not very helpful for the marketplace as well in terms of KYC, AML, responsible gambling initiatives. These are all initiatives that are really supported by regulated marketplaces. And then ultimately, if you're not regulated or operating in a regulated marketplace, we have to rely on these operators to self-regulate. And what's the likelihood of that when it comes down to the bottom line?
All right, thank you. Patricia, your perspective, please.
What seems a little bit comical to me is that I've seen some of our clients that even have the chief compliance officer overlooking both structures. So they become actually crazy because we're talking about compliance with regulation, with gambling regulation, but as Alan just pointed out, there are also other types of regulations outside the gambling specific one, the AML, which is getting quite more stringent in Europe, other KYCs, or even data protection issues. Which is the path these operators want to follow? It's absolutely short-sighted from our perspective, but obviously I lead a law firm, not an operator business. But it's absolutely short-sighted because even the people who work there get to a point when they provide services into a couple of regulated and then a couple of non-regulated, they just don't know what to do anymore. And that's where the big issues come along. They leave one window from their platform open mistakenly because they believe that certain specific technical requirement wasn't applicable in that jurisdiction. So it takes a lot of control and processes that I don't think that nowadays the operators could actually abide by. That's where the sanctions come, and that's where even the administrations ask kindly or ask these operators to sign that they will pull out from gray markets if they want to continue being licensed. So definitely, I don't say it's impossible, but I see that it's quite complex to be able to eat from the same pie.
All right, thank you.
Speaking about enforcement, in LATAM it is a bit weak because somebody works in gray, somebody operates as a licensed operator, and when it comes to fines and even license revocation, licensed operators are paying high price, and those who work in gray, they get their pie, a bigger one, I would say, yes. So if the legislation will be more stable, more clear, the taxes will be less, I think that everyone will be happy to work in white, yes, and be properly organized and compliant with the regulations.
Okay, Bill, your U.S. stance on this, on the gray markets?
Yeah, so how many people here, by the raise of hands, know an organization called Entain? Okay, if I asked this question in America, maybe Alan would raise his hand. It's not a well-known entity. I've been representing Entain. I love that company since 2009. And the reason I bring this up is just by a shake of your head. Remember Kenny Alexander? Kenny Alexander used to be with Superbet. Then he became the CEO of Entain. Kenny got into a huge fight with the board of directors of Entain, brought me into it, because he did not want to enter the U.S. I helped him get licensed in every jurisdiction that has any type of online. They're partnered with MGM. It's the company in America called BetMGM, 50-50 partnership. Why do I bring that up? We disclosed on all of our U.S. documentations, applications, and meetings to the regulators that Entain operated in Turkey, viewed by many, some may disagree, as a gray market. On again, off again. No real regulations. We were able to get them licensed. I remember Director David Reebok, the head of the DGE for 13 years, just retired last March, saying, Bill, we're not the policemen of the world. Now, obviously, had they operated in a directly black, illegal capacity, it'd be a different story. But think about this. U.S. states licensed Entain, which is the platform for MGM's BetMGM. And just 2 years ago, Crown prosecution went after Entain for that very subject topic, the Turkish operation, which took place years ago, fully disclosed, and the British prosecutors clawed back. So Entain panicked. I said, don't worry about it. That's not going to impact your license in my country because we disclosed it. And I remember it wasn't easy. We had hours, Kenny hated it, of interviews with him and the rest of the C-suites. But the problem is America is a very immature market. So is Canada, so is Brazil. We're in our nascent form. U.S. is perhaps a tad more mature than Canada. And Canada's a tad more mature than Brazil. But we're going to be dealing with those issues down the road as other markets emerge. That's why experience is critical. And I believe that the gray market issue, Alan did a great job of articulating it far better than me. It's nuanced. It's by virtue of its definition, it's not black or white, right? So the gray issue, to me, could be used as a leverage point. But what I see regulators starting to think about, some have started to execute it, not only in my country, but across the globe, is leveraging the licensing power. And by the way, the operator's most precious asset is their license. You can't do anything else without it. I don't care what your tech is or whatever. That's all value added. So I think regulators are starting to understand that it's in their interest to utilize the leverage point of the license to crack down on the illegal market and perhaps push back on the gray market, whether it's with operators or suppliers. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens to 365. My big concern about it is, I think it's a wonderful company, and I see Alan mentioned it, I don't want to because I represent them, but some of the suitors for 365, I don't like it. I think its consolidation is not good for the marketplace. It's becoming more and more monopolistic.
Thank you, Bill. Moving on to the responsible gaming and market compliance topic. And responsible gaming is just not a legal checkbox. It's part of everyone's business, right? So how do you see it evolving in your region? And also, how can operators turn this into a competitive advantage? And Lasha, I'll start with you. How does it actually shape product development?
More right. I'm going to talk about responsible gambling from the end user side, right? So what does it really mean? It means that, say, you have a deposit limit of 100 USD, right? That means that you cannot deposit more than 100 USD in a day or in a week or in a month, right? So you can set it up per project, per user, per segment, etc. Another really important thing there is that you should have a system in place that tracks the user behavior, tracks the transactions, gambling history, and if you find out that, hey, this guy is doing something crazy, he's gambling 24/7, you should trigger some message that, hey, chill out, maybe take a rest, right? So having said that, and also in Brazil right now, you can do the deposit bonus, the cashback is limited, so projects, B2Cs are getting more and more creative. They have to, because otherwise you're going to die there, right? So you need to be creative, maybe push more in the gamification, in the loyalty systems, and also the messaging. The messaging part is super important there, because starting from January 1st, you cannot use the influencers that can promote your project, basically. So yeah, I would say that all of these things put together, you should take into consideration and be more creative to stay alive, stay agile, and yeah, thrive there.
Okay, thank you. And Patricia, having Europe as an example, what can LATAM adopt when it comes to responsible gaming?
If you don't mind, Theo, I just want to briefly pick up one small matter that Bill pointed out, that the most relevant asset is for the operators the license. Well, that is true if you're licensed, and if you're in a jurisdiction where the license is actually worth something. But in many Latin jurisdictions, this is not the case. So the most relevant assets for many of these jurisdictions, Chile, Peru, and these jurisdictions where we've had the opportunity to advise big M&As, the biggest asset is their database, the trademark, and the operations itself. The Curacao license, yeah, it could be interesting. It is worth something in the M&A, but we even go past it quickly. We just want to make sure it's there. But the database in Latin America is one of the biggest and most relevant assets to date. So that has to be taken into account when your bet 365s, your bets go into to these jurisdictions. Obviously, they don't want to have their licensed jurisdictions affected by any non-compliance actions taken. But so I just wanted to point that out because I do think that it is relevant for this panel. In respect to responsible gambling, well, I think there are definitely some jurisdictions like Argentina, Provincia de Buenos Aires, or Colombia, or Brazil, that are definitely following the route that many of the European jurisdictions have begun or have entered into since many years ago in regards to responsible gambling. Others are still lacking that part. Maybe they're working on codes of conduct and self-regulation. But so we can differentiate two types of countries. From my experience in Spain, responsible gambling cannot be taken as something to greenwash or as something that's not going to impact your business, because it is going to impact your business, not only if you don't comply with the regulation where you get the sanctions, but also if you don't adapt appropriately and with, clients always say, business-oriented solutions. Well, then you will have you will be less competitive than other operators that have taken an holistic approach to responsible gambling, because you go into the field of KYC, what tools do you use? You go into very detailed discussions of when do I have to block the client, when is the rollover period. In the EU, that we have very, very clear AML regulations, there's still a lot of illegal uncertainty. You mentioned a lot. But LATAM, there's absolutely more illegal uncertainty. So I think there's a big opportunity of the operators taking and bringing in their knowledge of what has worked for them in the regulated markets when these countries become regulated, to actually approach the regulators and tell them, look, this is the problem, this is how we've been solving it, and this is how we've been technically doing this and trying to make it work. Because if not, it's going to be it is a big headache for the operators.
All right, thank you. Bill?
Yeah, so for the past 6 years, since September of 2019, I've served on the Global Foundation for Responsible Gaming with Martin Lichka and Amani Toomer for Entain. So I've done a lot of work in the RG space. I love the intro to the question because it's not a check-the-box type of thing. If that's what it is, then you really don't understand it. I think it is potentially the Achilles heel. I'll be a little bit more stark in my comments. We're talking about the legal regulated marketplace. That's where I operate. The Achilles heel for operators in the legal regulated marketplace is responsible gaming. You're one newspaper headline away from the whole system crashing. And I think we will have accomplished something when, in most jurisdictions there is the term what's called the key license holder. And I remember trying to get a major operator's head of RG to be the key license holder in a particular jurisdiction. And the regulator laughed at me and said, Bill, we all know that when that RG lead goes into the boardroom, they're kind of laughed at, not taken seriously. Why? Because they're competing against the RevPsych people. And what the RevPsych people have a responsibility to do is generate revenue. We understand that. But you also want to create a more sustainable industry so that the revenue doesn't collapse and go away. If this industry, and I'm going to sort of try to amplify what I said on the RG panel yesterday, if you'll permit me.
Of course.
I think it's very important to understand that it's critical to avoid what the retail casino industry has done from Vegas across the globe and around the world for decades, retail, they treated the gambling-addicted customer as a VIP. The online community cannot afford to do that, where every single transaction can be tracked. It's important to understand, and I've debated a lot on this. I went to a Christian university, Faulkner in Alabama last October, to debate the professor and dean of the ethics school at Faulkner on the morality of gaming. Why did I do that? Because nobody else in the industry, and they invited all the tier one operators, would go and do it. We have a great story to tell. The legal licensed operators are the good guys and gals. And we need to tell that story and be proud of it. We create jobs, we create tax revenue, and we also are building an institution that can also have what I like to refer to as the Entain RG approach. It's not a solution, it's an evolution. It's called ARC. Access, Responsibility, and Care. It was created in Israel. It has 87 different data points that are the markers of harm. Final point about RG. I am 1,000% against affordability checks. I'm a Democrat from America. I believe in equal opportunity, but I do not believe that governments should tell you what you can or cannot afford. Governments are not there to do that. They're there to protect us and create safety and security. Affordability checks are very dangerous, and I hope we can work collaboratively together to avoid that coming across the globe, because I know it's pretty prevalent in Europe.
Thank you, Bill. We touched on the gray markets. Let's go a bit of a different shade and move to the black one. And talk about the risks and mitigation when it comes to black markets. And they are alive and well, especially in Latin America, for example. What do you think are the risks that black markets, or actually, like you mentioned before, illegal, pose to licensed operators, and how should the industry tackle the issue of black markets? Maybe Valeria, would you like to start on this one?
I think that the regulators has to check the black operators, and they should ban the websites. And for example, we had the case in Peru where when the regulator asked us to provide the information about the trademarks under which we sell our content. So they check the website of operators. They differentiate, do you work with licensed one or not? And they are taking some actions against them. So to become a white one, this is, I think, the main goal of the regulator, to check and to ban, and to give the opportunity to licensed operators to wish work in white and not to switch to gray or black area. Because everyone understands that the question of corruption in countries of Latin America is a huge one, and you can operate in gray or black if you pay to somebody. So this should be not a question. They have to fight with that. I think this is the main idea, to turn to white operations.
Perfect, thank you. Alan, would you like to add on this, on the black markets?
Yeah, I think an easy way to tackle the black market is jurisdictions having licensing requirements for suppliers. So, for example, in Ontario, suppliers have to be licensed. There's other jurisdictions where they do not need to be licensed. So I think it's sort of like a full court press strategy to dry up the marketplace. I mean, you're going to have black markets everywhere, but again, it's not sort of a legal analysis, but it creates a lot of societal problems. There's fraud and money laundering, and it funds terrorism, and I think governments need to recognize that if they're going to fight all these societal issues, these black market gambling sites is a big problem. So an easy fix, well, not an easy fix, but one of the fixes would be license requirements for suppliers, and requiring operators to only use licensed operators. And all this is related. You know, we talked about responsible gambling and responsible gambling initiatives. I mean, they really prey on vulnerable people. And now with the advent of new technologies like AI, you can really monitor specific behaviors. I mean, we're all addicted to social media. I mean, half the room's probably looked at their phone 3 dozen times, checking Instagram and Facebook. There's a reason for that, right? These digital media companies know they know you better than you know yourself. And these black market operators have very, very deep pockets and access to the same technology as Meta and Amazon, and they're using the same tools that Meta and Amazon use to understand your psychology and take advantage of you. And for law enforcement and regulators to keep up, it's a game of cat and mouse. And I have to say, the cat in the example is the black market operators, because they're unrestricted, and they're smart, and they're well-moneyed. Pivoting a little bit, I just want to talk about responsible gambling a little bit. I know I wasn't asked to speak about it, but I think it's really incumbent to understand that licensed operators are not looking at preying on their customers. It's not good business to get their customers addicted. It's very bad business, and Bill touched upon that. It's bad publicity. It's bad for the bottom line, right? It's bad for goodwill. There's a real education component. Actually, Ala, on your panel yesterday, you spoke about the need to educate the marketplace, educate regulators, and for stakeholders to come together to put together a unified message on this isn't a industry that preys on its customers, right? This is entertainment for adults that creates tremendous tax revenue and jobs. Using the Canadian example, it added 15,000 jobs to the Ontario labor market. That's a lot of jobs, right? And if it's done responsibly, it has a huge benefit. And there's a lot of adult industries that do it right. I mean, alcohol, cannabis in Canada, right? It's a regulated marketplace. So to treat gambling like a pariah industry is both inaccurate, and I actually think it's just not only is it inaccurate, I don't think it's very helpful, right?
Thank you, Patricia. On the black markets question.
Yes, sure. So it's interesting because we spoke about gray, then black. So as in our preparation to this panel, I said, you know, it's fun to hear about all the 50 shades of gray, because it is actually a legal concept. In many jurisdictions, it is completely illegal without a doubt that operating without a license is illegal. Okay, so that, if we're considering that black, that's easy, okay? But then there are other jurisdictions where the legal system doesn't provide that straightforward answer. So I do think it's natural for a company to try to navigate those, not loopholes, because the word loophole has a negative influx to it, but to navigate where there's still opportunities. And I don't judge those who want to definitely navigate those loopholes, because it's healthy. It's up to the regulator and to the legislator, mostly the legislator, to adopt measures in order to protect or not further the people who can play on those websites. So if we're focusing on jurisdictions where it's clearly illegal to operate without a license, well, I think there's a very huge problem. Because if you are putting the burden on the operators to comply with absolutely every comma of the regulation, but then you are sanctioning other operators and the governments aren't being too serious about enforcement, well, then you have a problem. Because the regulated operators get frustrated. They see that they have a completely unhealthy competition, and it's growing. We see that is growing. There is enough technology out there, and I would have a couple of good names of technology providers that can detect with AI, big data, where the illegal market and operators are. But governments are not that interested in using those tools because nobody has approached them and tried to show them that instead of paying for these consultancy studies that aren't really well focused, why don't you really get those tools to see the amount of illegal operators that there are? It was very interesting to see in the other panel in Serbia, apparently there's only 1% of illegal gambling. I was surprised. I mean, that is absolutely amazing. But every day, more and more pop up. There are some measures being taken. For example, in Spain, they have a lot of experience since 2011, and prior to that, 2006, in the autonomous region of Madrid with regulation for online gambling. And it's taken them a long time to have the telecos block the IPs. And they've had to amend various regulations to make sure that the operator who comes illegally into the jurisdiction doesn't keep using it. So they are working. There's still a lot of work, and it's definitely something that the regulators have to focus on. If you want healthy regulation and operators to actually comply with it, make sure you're not putting more burden on them than the illegal operators.
Thank you, Patricia. We have about 6 minutes left, and Bill, if you can, in 1 minute, tell us about what is the US doing regarding the black markets, so then we can move to payments real quick and have payments, a 5-minute chat about payments.
Yeah, I thought Patricia outlined it well. What I would say is that regulators in America, like in many other jurisdictions, are resource challenged. They also don't have the long arm of the law. You can block all day long addresses. The black market will just pop up with a new address. It's not an effective tool. I think a more effective tool for regulators across the globe, not just in my country, is to go after what Alain eloquently talked about, which is if you're in my jurisdiction, and I'm the regulator, and you're an operator, you cannot utilize a sub-licensee or a supplier that operates in the black market. You can detect that very easily. So whether they're doing geolocation services or affiliate services, which are required to be licensed in many jurisdictions in America, or KYC or age verification, I guarantee you they're going to have to think hard about whether they want to pull out of the legal market. Because it's fun to operate in the black market until you want to sell your company. And then you're limiting the pool. Final thing, last year in New York, I was doing a panel with some real high-powered people like Tom Waterhouse, who's a global phenom out of Australia in the investment business in our industry. And somebody popped up in the audience, and it was a big crowd. It was March last year. You might have been there, Alan. And said, they did direct it to me, thankfully, and said, isn't it often easier for a startup to start in the black market? And I just sat back and let all the investors talk about it because they don't think oftentimes about legality and what's proper and ethical and legal. And so I came in hard and said, you can do that all you want, you'll probably be successful, but you're probably not going to get into eventually the legal market. Final point, very exhibit A for this. Watch the sweepstakes industry in America, what's happening. There's 5 states that ban it. The rest of the states is pretty gray, but they're starting to come down on that sweepstakes market. And it'd be very interesting to see how that evolves.
Thank you, Bill. So moving on to payments and AML, there are major pain points in Latin America specifically. And I would like to understand what are the biggest hurdles and how operators and providers navigate them. And Lasha, I'll start with you when it comes to product features that can actually help to stay compliant.
Yeah, so I guess the one word is automation, right? So regulation, let's say, attacks the user experience in total, right? So for example, right now in Brazil, if you want to onboard your customer, you got to get their information, address verification, payment verification, et cetera, et cetera. So what's the best thing to do is maybe cut it down in different pieces and then automate as much as you can. For example, we use CPFs, right, in Brazil. It's like the ID number in Brazil, so you might have to fetch this information with CPF and then basically autofill it with some type of service so that the user doesn't have to really be there for like 15 minutes and type in their addresses and then verify it and kill all the joy and fun. So yeah, I would suggest just using automation services and thinking as much as possible for the UX of the customer.
Perfect. Thank you. Patricia, we got 2 minutes left, so I guess you can have the last intervention. And
Well, I'll be brief in order to give
fine.
time to
just
the rest.
The one Zoltan too.
Very, very briefly, I think the payment provider industry itself, sub-industry, is even more complex than the operator gambling because they have to comply with the financial requisites. They have to make sure their tax structure is in place. They need to know what the gambling regulation is going to look like in certain jurisdiction, the AML, and that's completely fragmented in Latin America. So it is a big challenge as the gambling regulations themselves do touch upon, even for responsible gambling purposes, are even modeling what payment providers have to do. So long story short, payment providers are also heavily regulated, and you need to choose the partner that is not going to drive you downhill with their payment provider services.
All right, perfect. Does the audience have any questions for the panel? Nope. Come on. I'm sure you have a question about the regulations in Latin America. Okay then. Thank you very much, guys. We've reached our time limit, and we don't want to delay the next panel. So Zoltan, take it away. Thank you very much, and I'll see you around. Thank you, guys.